Hello, Joe back again, talking about knee valgus. And in this video, we're going to talk about some compensatory things that the body will do to avoid a knee that buckles in, but how that's still dysfunctional and problematic. And so to review, efficient knee alignment has the knee centered between the middle of the foot and the middle of the hip joint. And knee valgus occurs when that knee is allowed to buckle in. This becomes painful at the knee. It can also become painful above or below the knee. And so the interesting thing is we really don't see a really severe knee valgus very frequently in the running population. I seldom see something that significant. Every once in a while I will see somebody kind of running like this. And I think the reason is that this is such a severe inefficiency that it causes a lot of pain, and people aren't running like that for very long before they're disrupted with an injury of some sort. But does that mean that since we barely see this, that this isn't a problem and that everyone has good alignment and everyone has strong hips? Not exactly. And it's taken me many years clinically, but also as a coach and a runner, to realize that the body will do kind of sneaky compensations to avoid this, but still not use the hip and land in an efficient way. And one of the main ways that it does this is with a narrow or a crossover landing pattern. And before I talk about that, let's talk about what efficient is. So in the efficient state, if I'm running, what should happen is I should land, not like that, but I should land with my foot directly underneath my center of mass. So if you cut me in half from head to toe, my foot should perfectly balance or be perfectly centered underneath my body. And so that's our stance phase when we run, and that's our way to be balanced. Unlike walking, because we always have a foot on the ground with walking, we can have a relative stride width. A crossover landing pattern looks like this. You cross that imaginary midline, which is here, cross over to the opposite side of the body, and in doing so, there's a couple things. The pros is, you can see my leg is straight now, and it's almost impossible for me to do knee valgus in this position. But that comes at a cost, right? Because look at where I just landed. So there's a couple consequences to that. Number one, the impact stresses are just as significant, if not more significant, because now rather than land with my foot flat, when I cross over, even if it doesn't necessarily show it in the camera, by virtue of crossing midline, I am laterally loading at my foot and throughout my entire leg. So instead of my tires running like this on the road, this tire lands and is now riding that rim. And you can see that right now. And so this creates a tremendous amount of pain issues or dysfunctions because of that excessive landing stress on the outside of the leg. But it also, as you might see, that creates a lot of extra pronation. So I may land, that's stressful, but then I come crashing down and I create this hyperpronation moment. So that's really stressful. But the other thing that happens is, just like with valgus, I may be temporarily stable by landing like this, but now look at this leg. If I'm trying to push off to come through, I can't do that nearly as well. So again, in this plane, if I land narrow, now this hip doesn't really have the ability to powerfully push off behind, and so now, I'll show you in this direction too. Now this leg is behind, this leg can't push very well, and so it is an inefficient, efforted swing through to get that leg forward. So you wind up with almost just a slightly different version of the same two problems that you have with knee valgus when you have a narrow or a crossover landing pattern. Excessive stress, and then a compensated or a inhibited push-off, which is again going to cause stress problems on the opposite leg, but in general you're losing out on speed. So that's a really important thing to look for. And for self-assessment with runners, I'm always looking in the frontal plane, and I just want to see when they run, can they basically land in midline? They don't have to stagger, but am I consistently seeing a pattern of either both foot, or usually it's one that does it significantly more. The one's doing pretty well, the other one's crossing. One does well, the other one's crossing. And it's almost like they're running and they're falling to one direction. And you'll sometimes see this on a treadmill. And so if you're interested in that at home, what you can do is just try to run on a line. Can you run just standing on a line, like a lane line on a track? And if you really struggle with that, you may have a little bit of this compensatory crossover narrow pattern.